Welcome back, everyone. My name is Eugene Hough with the Legacy Marker Program, a program dedicated to preserving and protecting monuments and memorials, and in turn, engaging students and communities to share their rich historical narratives. Today, I have a very good friend, Ms. Coleen Holt McCauley, who is here as my guest, and we're going to be speaking a little bit about her experience in working with nonprofits, fundraising, and more about also a little bit of her rich background in various organizations that in many ways are important in engaging communities along the lines of the mission of the Legacy Marker Project. Coleen, thanks for coming today. I was hoping maybe on your bio was listed you're a lawyer, and I'm interested in how that training has helped you. For instance, beginning on your resume mentions your involvement with the Philadelphia Charity Ball. There's a lot of organization that goes into running these sorts of things with fundraising. So with your experiences as a clinician, as a lawyer, how has that played into helping you with your work in, for example, the Philadelphia Charity Ball?
Well, it's given me an ability to organize and fundraise, help fundraise. In other words, I enjoy communicating with people. I can communicate in writing as well as verbally. And I actually love animals and dogs. And many years ago, I started out helping raise money for Mainline Rescue, the animal rescue. And then I transitioned into becoming involved in many other fundraising opportunities, such as the Philadelphia Charity Ball, which raises money for Special Olympics of Pennsylvania.
Interesting.
Can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
Just a little plug for Special Olympics of Pennsylvania. They're having a big fall event at Villanova in November, and it is fantastic to see the athletes from Villanova as well as Special Olympics work together. They did a fantastic job last year with a basketball game that was riveting. So, but that's our beneficiary for the charity ball.
Each year, then?
Yes.
Each year?
Yes,
okay.
Every year. It used to be hospitals, but that's long gone.
I think it's interesting on that note that through the Legacy Marker Program, and with my background in working with challenged youth, physical handicaps, bringing students in to work on monuments and memorials in an open-air classroom. And I think it's interesting because Philadelphia Insurance Company recently is now dedicated funds to support entities that also overlap into the Special Olympics category. And I think the great equalizer are love of dogs and cats.
Yes.
And we, on my own, have been involved with accepting and taking in animal rescues, which are the best friends. But your experience from that end is that there's a dire need for more people to bring some of these rescues into their homes because...
Oh, absolutely. My daughter has done it, and I had 5 dogs at one time. I just have to get my husband to go along with it. He loves dogs too, but he said, we have a good harmony right now with our 2 that we currently have. But it's my really first love. It's dogs and horses.
That's fabulous. And it's important because, again, you're dealing with all sorts of constituents out there that may not be aware of the opportunity to support something along the lines, whether it's animal rescue or the Special Olympics. Because Studio 21, and we're very grateful for allowing the Legacy Marker. Now, I think this is our 5th presentation on different topics, and we're hoping to continue this each month in the year ahead. And it's highlighting, again, the general community along the main line. And another earmark on your bio here is Appleford, which is a wonderful estate. But I've mentioned Appleford to individuals, and they don't even know where it is. Can you tell me more about Appleford?
Absolutely. It's on Mount Morrow Road over in Villanova, and Mrs. Parsons lived there. Unfortunately, her son passed away before she did, and she left it to Lower Merion Township. It is an arboretum as well as his historic home going back to the 1600s that has been since added on. One addition was by Bernard Oakey, and they are always doing rentals there, sometimes for weddings, sometimes for nonprofits. For example, I've been able to have board meetings at Appleford, which has been wonderful, and luncheons. We have a new director of marketing now, and then we have a whole committee of gentlemen and ladies who work, and we have an annual Christmas party. You can join Appleford. It's very easy to find on the website. Just put applefordestate.org, I believe is the website. But another love of mine is historic houses, and I just love the way Appleford has been maintained, the way Mrs. Parsons left it, with all her collections and possessions and antique furniture, and we just have a wonderful. It's a special atmosphere, very special.
Who takes care of the gardens?
Oh, well, we have a gentleman, John Rice is on the committee, and he is in charge of the Arboretum, and he acquires trees. If a tree falls down, he takes care of it. They have the ability to plant trees in memory of people, but we actually are on the little passport for gardens in the area. That is, it's wonderful. And so to answer your question, there's a whole group of people that help maintain the rose gardens, the shrubs, the hedges, and I'm recording secretary for the committee, so I take the minutes.
Would you be interested in having some volunteers, possibly from Devereux or youth that might be exposed to an opportunity to get out in that type of environment just on a basic level, to be around plants?
Absolutely. They give tours, and I'm sure they would appreciate that very much.
I know for the Willows that we, with the effort for Radnor on the preservation of the Willows, they periodically have volunteer gatherings, and I had reached out and I said, look, you have individuals who are now in recovery at some of these detox centers, and you have veterans with TBI, PTSD, and they're trying to get a better relationship with their families besides their own stresses. And there was some interest to see how we might engage some of those people to have an opportunity even to go out to the Willows, because there's a dire need, as you well know, for these estates like Appleford to have
survive.
support.
Yes.
So
it's supported heavily by the neighbors. Thank goodness a lot of them are on the committee.
So that sort of thing I think is important. It's an inclusion that I think we take for granted sometimes, like an Appleford or the Willows, and you look at it and you say, wow, that's absolutely wonderful, but it takes people to invest in, whether it's hands-on or providing contributions.
The committee keeps it going, and we have a wonderful endowment, thank goodness, and we just redid the greenhouse approximately 2 years ago, and the greenhouse, actually, we put all our winter plants like the lantana in the greenhouse, and that was a over $200,000 investment that we were able to raise and put towards that, refurbishing it, because it was a bit of a safety hazard. But there are resident managers that live there, the McGinty's, and the township has been a great partner.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I'm going to move on to another topic because I love furniture. You were involved with the Philadelphia Antique Show, and can you tell about how that interfaces with the mainline communities? Are people, subscribers, supporting this from our area in Philadelphia?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me about the show?
Oh, well, every year, of course, there's a big Philadelphia Antique Show, and that was a while ago that I was on that committee. But if anyone has not been to it, I highly recommend it, because there's a lot of Philadelphia pieces from old Philadelphia families in the show, and you can learn about how they lived. That's why I love being involved in Stenton, as you know, is another historic site. It's up in North Philadelphia in the Germantown section. It's part of the consortium of houses, Clifton, Wick, but it was built in, I believe, the early 1700s, 1730 approximately, for James Logan, who was the secretary to William Penn in Pennsylvania at that time. And it's still a magnificent homestead that is maintained by the National Society of the Colonial Dames of America in Pennsylvania. We have a curator, we have a director at Stenton, and all of the furnishings inside the house are period pieces from the early 1700s. They just refurbished the whole yellow lodging room. But people come from all over to see Stenton, and many people aren't even aware of it. But right now they have a project going on for Dinah, who was a slave at the, well, it was a plantation essentially, and she kept Stenton from burning because the British were going to burn the house.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yes, and Dinah saved the property, and through various grants, and we've we're right now considering 3 sculptures in her memory, all with totally different, wonderful, creative visions. And they just had a presentation on that up at Stenton. And I'm going to a conference this weekend at Stenton supported by the McNeil Center for American Studies. There are so many wonderful collaborations in our area, you know, with Penn. Another house that I was involved in as the president of the Colonial Dames of America, a slightly separate group. I have both my insignias here.
Why don't you hold them up if you
Yeah,
need to?
I absolutely
for the
will.
audience right there.
They were they're women's lineage groups that were formed in the 1890s. The difference, they have different structures. And this is Colonial Dames of America, founded in 1890, and this is 1891, the National Society of the Colonial Dames. I'm a member of both. A lot of our members are members of both organizations as well as the DAR. Basically, we had ancestors that we can trace back before the Revolution. They came to one of the 13 original colonies and served in some capacity. For example, my ancestor, who is the same for both, came over on the fly ship Martha in late 1600s, settled in New Jersey at that time. And there was a division between West Jersey and East Jersey. And he was a proprietor, which meant he owned land, as well as an assemblyman. And that service he contributed to the formation of our nation enabled me to join these organizations and get involved in historic preservation, which is one of our missions. So for both Colonial Dames groups, maintain historic sites throughout the country, and I'll mention a few. One is Gunston Hall, James Madison, fantastic place, totally maintained by the Colonial Dames. We formally, the CDA, as I call it, Chapter 2, it has chapters, maintained Lemon Hill.
Which is a beautiful site.
I love that house so much. It was built in 1800 and has the wonderful oval rooms. It's located in Fairmount Park, of course, and it's one of the Fairmount Park houses.
I have a question to ask you in terms of going back to antiques, and I love antiques, but I get my antiques if I can find something at the thrift shop or like at Surrey Services. People are passing things on.
Thrill.
My concern is, and going to one of the antique shows, I was speaking with a couple of the providers, and I said, what's going on with youth today in terms of being exposed to the classics? What is a finial? Different types of throws, rugs, and couches and other items. And he said it's a challenge because you have an IKEA or you have other entities out there that are processing furniture and it looks good, but the reality is if you want something very special, yeah, but if you want something very special, there are some great bargains out there, and a lot of these entities who have furniture are interested and can work with you to provide something that you want and might be within people's budgets, but they just don't know.
Well, that's exactly true. And yesterday I was looking around. As you know, we're involved in an event coming up to celebrate the end of World War I and the troops coming home. But and I was looking for period pieces and came across several mementos from that era, which I'm fascinated by. One thing about, as you know, I was an attorney for many years, and I specialized in Chapter 11 bankruptcies. My children came along when I was 40 and 43, my daughters, and that's when I slowed down and looked for a different type of law and also something that I could do part-time. And that's when I became involved in nonprofit law. And so it gives me a lot of flexibility. Now my daughters are 26 and 24. Both of them, by the way, were in the Children of the American Revolution growing up. They were exposed to American history all the time through that organization. And they have an appreciation because they've been with me to these historic sites. They helped decorate at Lemon Hill at Christmas time. We would put up a tree and we would bring in all kinds of decorations, and they remember that. They were both dressed up in their beautiful little dresses. So, it is exposure. And as far as what we love, we all can find a passion. And I don't know exactly what your passions are, but I have collections in various areas, and I'm always being exposed to new things. We have a wonderful set of books behind us,
And
it can be rare books.
I'm definitely a book person as well. I want to share with you that your daughters and those, the children that are involved in historical societies, and I'm involved with some organizations as well, but as a teacher, when I go out to public schools, it's rather frustrating because there's, even in Radnor Township and Radnor High School, trying to find a time to go in and engage students to take part in a project, means-based testing, but the reality is getting out there and doing things in the field can be very exciting. Classic example, I've been up in East Vincent Township, and the Legacy Marker Program is hoping to receive some support from the Sons of the American Revolution to address a historic colonial monument where 22 veterans from the Revolutionary War are interned who did not survive, as I understand it, after Valley Forge. But the key piece is, what do the students know about it? And right near there is Owen J. Roberts High School. So I had the opportunity to go in and meet with this teacher, and the challenge is going in and dealing with kids that may not have the opportunity or parent to share history. So I went around the room and asked everyone to tell me what they were interested in. And lo and behold, whether it was engineering, I said, well, look, you're going to come out with students, so we're going to measure the monument and weigh it, what it's going to take. A woman was interested in bakery. So I said, look, tell me about the foodstuffs in the colonial times. Another person is interested in maps. A young lady, it turns out, was very shy, but she said, my family was in this area. Their name is Kime, and they have old maps and other items. So it goes on in terms of the outreach, and that's exactly what you've been doing. So with the remaining time, I want to tell the group a little bit about an event coming up, and why don't you take the lead on this?
Absolutely. I'm very, very excited about this event. It's open to everyone, and it's going to be held on November 16th at Radnor Hunt in Malvern. The purpose, of course, is to commemorate the end of World War I, which was 1918 when the armistice was signed. Again, I'm learning a lot more about World War I, which I never focused on before, but Jean is our co-chair, along with a gentleman named Coleen McCauley, who has written a wonderful book, which I have in front of me, called Bright Hunting Morn. But in this book, he has photos, which I believe we're going to have our
I think we're going to put one of the horse being unloaded, yeah.
I did not know about the thousands of horses that we sent over to Europe to participate in World War I, and how very few of them, as Colin notes, came back from the war effort. Of course, I've looked at images. We're going to have dancing to the music of the 1920s. We've hired a band. So this is where the celebration comes in. So we're going to commemorate the men and women, horses and dogs too, who worked in the war effort and came back from Europe basically 1918, 1919, we're 100 years later. The centenary was last year, November 11th, of course, the date being the end of the World War I. But we were shipping our own horses over, and as well as there were dogs. I've seen images now online of dogs in gas masks.
Yeah.
And in a way, they're very solemn, very horrifying, but the dogs were used a lot with the soldiers. And so we're going to have all these images at the event blown up. And we're also going to encourage people to come in period costume. We have wonderful food, and the dancing will be great as well. But the main part is toasting these of our ancestors. There were some from Radnor Hunt, actually, who served in the remount service.
Yes.
Gene knows so much about this, and I'm very impressed with all that you've done in that area. So now we are actually having an event and people coming and helping us raise money. It's actually the beneficiaries, the Helms Foundation.
But we're bringing partners into the table to help us. And so we're going to have a French baker on docket who's going to make a cake. And he is a treasure trove of World War I medals from Germany and France and England. And he's extremely excited.
Are they his father's, or how did he... I know they're artifacts, but how did he accumulate those?
He's an enthusiast, and I believe he had a family member that actually served, but he went beyond that, and being over in France, obviously trying to find these artifacts is a challenging piece. We're also going to have a time capsule, and we've learned that with the wonderful digital component that Studio 21 can offer, digital items may not last 100 years. So we're going to have things written down on scrolled paper, as well as
yes,
items
thoughts and feelings
and photographs as well. So
yes, and we're going to bury it actually at Radnor Hunt.
And in front of a tree that was donated by Sam Browns. It's a white oak.
Right.
And we're having one of the local morticians hopefully provide us a vault. And it turns out his family was, their business is over 100 years old. McKinney, I believe, is
Chadwick and McKinney is the name,
McKinney.
And his name is Roger McKinney.
His ancestor was a cabinet maker. And after the war ended, it was tragedy. The problem was they had to intern bodies, or people wanted their bodies brought back up to Philadelphia. They didn't have the means of doing it. So these cabinet makers jumped into the fold, and thus coffins were being created. And that's where his business evolved. So it's fascinating.
I know. Anyone who would like to come, you can contact Gene or me, or actually their tickets can be purchased through a credit card or send a check, and all of that information can be found on the materials we're providing.
And we have the screen will put up that, so
wonderful.
Erin Doherty, and it's eDoherty at mac.com.
Yes, yes.
And this is important to invite anybody that's interested in the period. It's an opportunity
Veterans,
to celebrate.
Members of lineage societies,
yes,
men and women. I was so excited last night. I was looking at the DAR website. I'm a daughter of the American Revolution in a local chapter called Jephthah Abbott. And I realized that they are having an exhibition right now on women from World War I who contributed again to the war effort through the Red Cross or whatever. It's called Women of Resilience. And anyone who's in D.C. may want to go by the DAR headquarters to see this, but it coincides exactly with what we're celebrating and commemorating.
And resilience paid off in terms of women receiving, granted the opportunity to vote, because President Wilson in the beginning was indicating that it was going to happen, and he did not. And throughout that movement, women going and serving in various capacities kept him in line, and probably his wife was hitting him behind the scenes to get in order, and thus it was a major event, 100 years of history, that no pantyhose, no Tupperware. If you go down the list of items that was written in a book in the prefatory note called The Last Doughboy, gentlemen went around the country, interviewed octogenarians, And these men and women were saying, things were tough. We walked to work, you had 2 jobs, didn't have any of the things we have today. And I think it's important not to take things for granted. And that's why this is so important to celebrate the people and the times. And
Bring
it's
awareness
all-inclusive.
of what their lives were like, and hopefully we'll never see something like that again. It was just a horrific war, and I always knew that, but now I'm learning a lot more detail, and it's horrifying. So we will have a silent auction at this event as well, and local companies are contributing towards the silent auction. And again, it's open to everyone. We're trying to get the word out. Jean is very good at that, disseminating information, but we hope that you'll come. And again, I just got involved because of my past experience in helping organize events, and we have a wonderful committee helping us.
And it's crucial. And in closing, I just want to mention Coleen is absolutely fabulous in what she's done. She really has done and brought all her skills to the table, because there's so many things to do, and you need somebody with a good mind and organized and keep everybody on track and juggle all the variables involved. And anybody who's been involved fundraising or planning events, it takes a good committee. And I think that's another reason why people should learn about the Colonia Dames, the DAR, Appleford,
and all the historic sites in our area. The Washington Memorial Chapel, another fabulous.
And they need volunteers. So
DAR,
get your youth out to these sites, learn about history, volunteer, and again, please come to our event. And I want to thank you very much for joining us today.
It was a pleasure.
And thank you to Studio 21 as well. Thank you very much.